When the Labor caucus meets on Monday, its 103 members will no doubt have the latest polling in mind, especially the figures comparing how Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd stack up against each other as preferred Prime Minister, and whether new polling shows if either of them could take Labor to victory against Tony Abbott. Kerry Brewster reports.
It's a busy time for pollsters, including Newspolls' Martin O'Shannessy, whose team is gathering the views of 1,200 voters ahead of Monday's crucial caucus meeting. He says a leadership change is the medicine that failed in New South Wales.
I think they face a challenge, which is if they do this and make one more mistake, they may well have really put the seal on their fate. It's a pretty risky strategy.
Despite a slight recovery in December, Prime Minister Julia Gillard and her minority government have suffered a long, debilitating slump in the polls. According to Newspoll, Gillard took Labor to an all-time low of 26% in the primary vote last September. Its most recent polling shows her in better shape, but still deep in negative territory.
Well, she's about as popular as Tony Abbott. 33% of people are satisfied with her performance, about 57% dissatisfied. So she's quite deeply in negative territory on people satisfied with her performance. And I hasten to add, so is Tony Abbott.
So on the current figures, would she be voted back in as Prime Minister?
No, her government would lose and the coalition would have a 30-odd seat majority.
Several senior Labor ministers have stated their preference for Julia Gillard, describing Kevin Rudd as chaotic, dysfunctional and demeaning to his colleagues. But Kevin Rudd's supporters are using the result of last September's Newspoll, when 57% of those surveyed said Kevin Rudd would make a better Prime Minister than Julia Gillard.
I imagine that that's part of the narrative they're putting about. And I imagine that they're also saying that the two-party vote for Kevin Rudd when he was deposed was 52%, which would have given them a nice little majority of about 16 or 18 seats. You have to ask yourself, though, given that he'd burned over 8% of primary vote since the election and had taken the Labor Party into new territory of 35% of primary vote, whether that fall would have continued if he'd remained. There may be a very good argument that suggests that Kevin Rudd would have led the Labor Party just to exactly where it is now, 35% when he finished, 32% now. That's within the margin of error on the poll.
But Martin O'Shannessy says it's hard to see any Labor leader beating Tony Abbott.
I think that Tony Abbott, with a 45% primary vote, is feeling pretty confident. And, there's going to be change as we head towards the election. But Labor needs to put 10% on their primary vote, even more if they're to rule in their own right. That is a very big ask.
Kerry Brewster, Lateline.